So let's see how you can actually analyze the vulnerabilities that you already found in Kubernetes. So in this video, we'll review some vulnerabilities that we can find in Kubernetes and show you how those security vulnerabilities were solved. So in the same way as we did for Docker, you can actually see all vulnerabilities related to Kubernetes into the CVEdetails.com website, where you can simply go to the Kubernetes page and see all the vulnerabilities found throughout the years. So for example, you can see in 2022, there were still about 11 vulnerabilities found in Kubernetes. While the worst year probably was 2019, when you had 16 vulnerabilities exposed. And of course here you can see a very good graph by year, so you can get a good understanding on how Kubernetes was performing throughout the years. So maybe one of the most critical vulnerability for Kubernetes is the CVE 100-2105 found in 2018. And it was identified in the Kubernetes API server. So this vulnerability would allow any authenticated Kubernetes user to obtain administrative access to the cluster using standard security strings and allows the escalation of Kubernetes privileges through specifically designed proxy request. If you want to see the affected Kubernetes versions from this vulnerability, you can, for example, go to the Red Hat website, and let's say for the Red Hat, you can see this vulnerability, and if you scroll down, you see all the versions in which this was fixed, and also versions, if you go back, that this vulnerability was existing. So sometimes it is a good idea to check the website of your operating system, so you can check if a vulnerability is still present in that system. And if you know that your company can be in risk because of a certain vulnerability, you can make sure that from those websites of your operating system, you can find whether you have or you don't have this vulnerability present. So this vulnerability has already been solved by the Kubernetes development team, and it is recommended to update your Kubernetes versions to the last one so you have it fixed. And you can find the information for fixing this vulnerability on github.com, where the Kubernetes team have explained very well on what the fix is and how it might affect the operating systems that people are using. So another critical vulnerability was actually found in 2020, and this vulnerability enables an attack called man-in-the-middle attacks. During that attacks, the attacker can interpret the network traffic and intercept it to a pod in the Kubernetes cluster, and in that way he can find quite valuable information for clients. The vulnerability was found in all versions of Kubernetes up to until version 0.8.6. This would allow malicious containers in Kubernetes cluster to be used to perform these attacks. So to do that, the malicious container can send a flow of IPv6 router advancements to the host or other containers and redirect the traffic to the malicious container, from where he can exploit all the information the attacker needs. And the last vulnerability that I want to discuss with you guys, it is the vulnerability with the pod security privacy. This vulnerability allows you to bypass the pod security privacy on any Kubernetes cluster. So in Kubernetes, the pod security privacy is one of the resources that allow the administration controller to decide whether a pod can be created by a service account depending on the configuration. For example, if privileged mode pods are not allowed in the pod security policy, any pod that tries to create privileged mode from that service will fail. This usually works, but some security audits have found cases in which the monitoring of the host path volumes is done instead of using a persistent volume. So this restriction is not taken into account if you are working with present volume claim or PVC. The result is that any user could mount a directory of the host machine from the container and have access to the file system managing to escape from the container. So the solution of this vulnerability was to enable the pod security privacy, not to limit the types of persistent volumes, and this should only give allowed user access to the cluster resources. So this was everything from this video and that section actually. I hope now you're aware for some of the key vulnerabilities and also how you can audit and analyze your Kubernetes vulnerabilities from the terminal. That's it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.